Hello, I'm Ben Adams. Congratulations on purchasing your new Travisher. I'm just going to do a quick video to show everyone how I use my Travisher and how I sharpen the blade and how to take the blade in and out for both my Model 2 and Model 1 Travisher. So let's get into it. So when you get your Model 2 Travisher, you'll notice that there's two threaded inserts here, stainless steel threaded inserts with grub screws that hold the blade in place. So in order to take the blade out, all you need to do is unscrew those grub screws, a couple of turns, and the blade should just slip straight out. And that's how you can adjust the blade position and also sharpen the blade or hone it if it's only just a little bit dull. So I'm just in the middle of making a new batch of Model 2 Travishers, so I thought this would be a really great time to go through how I sharpen all of the blades in the new Travishers that I make. So when you get your Travisher, it will already be sharpened and ready for use. So I get my Travisher blades laser cut out of a sheet of 80 CRV2 high carbon steel, and then I heat them up and bend them into this shape. And at that point, I'll give every blade a hollow ground bevel on the bench grinder. So if you want to make your own Travisher and you buy one of these blades on its own, it'll come like this. So it's got a bevel and it's got an edge, but it's not particularly sharp. So I'm going to show you how to sharpen the edge from this point. So right here I've got 3 grits of sandpaper. I've got 400, 600 and 1200. And I've got a 1000 grit waterstone, Japanese waterstone, and a 5000 grit waterstone. Now you can use whatever sharpening stones you have or a piece of glass with some sandpaper. And I've also got here a piece of dowel, which I have cut a little slot into to accept some sandpaper, and I'll show you how that works. So I like to raise the blade up onto a little chock of wood or something. You can do this off the side of your bench, whatever suits you, but I like to have it raised. I start with my 400 grit, and I'll slip it into that slot in the dowel like this, and then wrap it around the dowel, and the friction of the sandpaper will hold it in there, no problem. You wrap it around nice and tight, then holding it nice and tight, what you're going to do is place the sandpaper on the bevel of the blade so that it makes contact with the back edge and the front edge of the bevel. And now all I'm going to do is put the blade up on this chock of wood and place the sandpaper in that position across the bevel, and then gently I'm going to scrape the sandpaper across the bevel. Go. Now you can see here where the sandpaper has made contact. The two shiny areas is where the sandpaper has made contact. And that's the beauty of the hollow grind. It means you don't have to remove as much material. Now you'll find the sandpaper does wear out really quickly because this is a very hard blade. So all you have to do is turn the dowel slightly to get a new fresh piece of sandpaper and continue. Once you get used to it, you can start to speed up, making sure you're getting all the way across the length of the edge. Now after a few seconds, turn it over and you can feel a burr starting to develop on the other side. Once you can feel a burr all the way across the edge there, then you move to your sharpening stones. So just give this a little bit of a spritz of water on my 1000 grit stone. And the movement here takes a little bit of getting used to. Just gonna drag the blade across, and you can see the 2 points of contact that the blade makes on the stone. And that's because the backside is also hollow ground. So you'll continue this to remove the burr from the back. Just like that. And you should be able to feel the burr has now developed on the other side. It's moved from the back side. Now you can feel it on the front side there. Then we go back to the sandpaper, but this time we'll start with a 600 grit. And it's the same process. We just keep going up in the grits. So this is 600 grit now. We do the same as before. We find that point where it no longer rocks and it's straddling that hollow grind of the bevel. And nice and gently. Don't have to use that much pressure, especially now that you've got a burr developed. Just enough to remove the scratch marks from the 400 grit, essentially. There we go. And now I can feel the burr on the back again. So now at that point, I'll move on to my higher grit stone, which is 5,000 grit, and do the same process here. Get it in a better position so you can see the movement a little bit easier. At this point, you're not really putting that much pressure on because you're essentially just folding over that burr from one side of the edge to the other until it disappears. Go. Now I can feel it on the other side again. Feels like there's a spot here where I can't quite feel the burr folded over, so I will keep going until I can feel it. There we go, that's better. So now I can feel that burr all the way across the edge. Now we're ready for our last grit, which is the 1200 grit. Wrap it around the dowel just like before. And you do have to make sure this is quite tight, because if it's loose, then you'll end up rolling over the edge a little bit. So now at these higher grits, you have to use even less pressure. Just really honing the edge when we get up to these higher grits. The idea is just to remove the burr and fold it back over to the other side, so that eventually when we move to the strops, the burr will disappear and we'll have a perfectly sharp edge. There we go, now I can feel the burr on the other side again. And I like to just do one more session with this 5,000 grit stone, just to make sure the back is nice and smooth. There we go. Now we're ready to move on to the strop. Now, a lot of people have dowels that already have leather attached to them, but I'm very lazy, so I just get a scrap piece of leather and just wrap it tightly around like that. Just hold it in place. Add a little bit of polishing compound. And then I'm just going to hold the blade like this in these two fingers, and I'll put pressure with my forefinger on the spine of the blade like this. Hold it nice and tight. And the movement here is to drag it across the leather like so, making sure that the edge is making contact and that you're getting the entire length of the edge there. Just keep going like that until I think you've got the whole edge done there. And you can see those shiny areas there are getting very shiny now. At this point, we can move on to the back side using a strop like this. This is just a piece of leather I've got stuck to an old piece of timber, nice flat piece of timber. So I'm just going to use the same motion that I did with the whetstones on this strop, and it's a dragging motion. So you can see I've got the blade skewed so that the edge is always dragging away. You definitely don't want to be dragging into the blade, because then it'll catch and dig into your strop, ruin your strop and ruin your edge. So once you get used to it, again, just like the sharpening stones, you get a feel for it and muscle memory will kick in. There we go. And I like to switch between the two strops probably 4 or 5 times, just to make sure that I've got that burr completely honed off. Keep going on this side. You'll be really surprised after you've used your Travisher for a while and it's starting to get a little bit dull. You'll be surprised how well just a strop like this will improve the quality of the cut. Go one last one on the flat strop on the back. Now I can see there's still a little bit of the burr left over there. There's a little glint where I can see there's still some burr left. So I'm going to keep going a couple more times on the strop. What we're essentially doing is folding over the burr to one side, then the other side, then the other side. Enough times that then it becomes so weak that it just falls off. And then you're left with a perfectly straight, sharp intersection between two flat planes, or in this case, two curved planes. There we go. You can see now the burr is starting to peel off. You can see just that little tiny hair. That's the burr peeling off the edge there. That's how you know you're on the right track. You don't want to pull that hair off, because that'll give a bit of a ragged edge. So you want to fold the burr over until it comes off of its own volition. Okay, so that burr seems to be gone now. Now how I test if it's sharp enough, really easy way to test it is just to see if it'll shave some hair. Yep, and that's shaving hair. So that is more than good enough to put back in your Travisher. And it's working, it's shaving all the way across the edge, which is good. Another really good way to test how sharp a blade is to cut some paper with it. Now you could get a sheet of newspaper and slice it all to shreds, but I like to save paper, so I've just got some post-it notes here. You don't need much paper. See, it's making nice curls and leaving a really nice finish on the paper there. And you can tell at this point if there are any nicks in the blade. You'll be able to feel them as you scrape it across. So that's really good. I'm happy with that. So that is ready to put in a Travisher, and that'll get really nice shavings. So I've shown you how to take the blade out of a Model 2 Travisher, but if you have a Model 1 Travisher, it's a little bit more complicated. If you order a Model 1 Travisher, it'll come like this in a box, and you'll notice when you take it out that the Model 1 Travisher doesn't have any threaded inserts to be able to take the blade out. So these blades, the tangs are actually friction fit into the body of the Travisher, and every body of the Travisher is made specifically for each blade, because every blade is slightly different, being a handmade item. So I'll show you how I like to get the blade out of one of these. I'll just get a couple of scrap pieces of wood. You can also do this in a vise, if you bring your vise open enough. And all I do is just put a rag in there so that we don't damage the arms of the Travisher. And now we want to push the tangs all the way through to get the blade out. So I like to just start it off with a wooden mallet. I'll push the tangs through until I can't hammer them down anymore, so they're flush. And then the easiest way that I've found is just to grab an old nail, and I've just cut the end off. And this is a really easy way to just tap on the top of the tangs bit by bit. Until the whole thing comes out. It only takes a couple of seconds. Just nice and gentle, so you're not stressing the blade too much. And these nails are nice and soft, so they're not going to damage the hard steel of the tangs. So that's how you get it out. At this point then you can sharpen it or hone it or whatever you need to do. But now if you want to use this to make some shavings and make some chair seats, just a matter of pushing it back in. There should be enough play that you can push it most of the way in with your hand, and then using a wooden mallet, again, you're tapping on the spine of the blade there, a little bit at a time, taking note of how much blade is sticking above the sole of the Travisher, and adjusting it until you can see about a millimeter or just under a millimeter sticking up above the sole. Now it's tilted down on this side a little bit more, so I'm going to tap the tang through so that it lifts the blade up slightly here. And I'll push it back down there. There we go. Now I've got a nice even amount of blade sticking up above the sole. And to adjust the blade on the Model 2 Travisher, it's just a matter of slipping it in and holding the blade where you want it to be. You just make sure that it's sticking up just enough, about 1 millimeter above the sole. And I like to just hold it there with my finger while I tighten the set screws. Go. And double check, make sure it hasn't moved. That's pretty good. Just give it a little bit more of a tighten. You don't need to tighten these very much. Just enough to keep the blade in place. So don't go cranking down on them, otherwise they might strip. So now I'm going to show you how I like to use a Travisher and how to hold it to get the best results. Okay, so if you haven't used a Travisher before, this is what it's for. It's for creating nice, smooth curves in a chair seat or a bowl or a dish. This is just a stool seat that I've been working on. So the way to hold a Travisher, a lot of people will want to try and grab it like handlebars and push it that way. But they're designed to be pushed, and all you need to do is grab it with these 2 fingers. Your thumbs go down there and your 4 fingers go on the top here. And the lower your fingers are down towards the bottom of the tool, the more control you're going to have. So these 2 fingers I just use to grab the tool, and the only other finger you really use is your middle finger on either side just to steer the tool. The only reason why these arms are as long as they are is just so the other fingers have somewhere to rest. So to begin with, I like to sit the Travisher on the piece, and you can rock it backwards and forwards, and you can feel the point at which the edge of the blade makes contact with the timber. If I just push it forward slightly, I can feel the blade scraping across the timber. It's taking a little shaving. So the beauty of the Travisher is you can adjust the depth of cut with how you angle the blade. If you start by holding the tool right at the very front of the edge there, you can make nice thin shavings, right? And then if you want to make a deeper shaving, you just tilt it back slightly. That degree of tilt that you've got there is essentially how you decide how deep you want the cut to be. And when you're using a Travisher, it's a little bit counterintuitive. You think because you're making a dish that to exit the cut, you want to lean back and tilt the tool back to exit the cut. It's actually the opposite. To disengage the blade, you push it forward and tilt it forward, and then the blade lifts up away from the timber. So if I'm here just making contact with the wood there, I'll tilt it forward to let go of that cut. So if you start just by creating the smallest shavings you can, essentially riding on that brass strip there until you feel the blade make contact, and at this point you're just making really fine shavings. If you then adjust how much you tilt the tool back, you'll find that you can take deeper and deeper and deeper shavings. So you can decide how deep you want the cut. And then once you get used to the feel and the angle, you can start to speed up. And you can see we're creating a dish already. We end up with shavings that look like that. And it works exactly the same with the Model 1. You can start with nice thin shavings. And then the more pressure you put on your thumbs and the further you lean the tool back, the deeper the cuts go. And you can get some really, really thick curls. And again, the way that you hold this is the same as in the Model 2. Your thumbs sit down here, and your 4 fingers rest in these little grooves there. And that's as much holding as you need to do. And the middle finger is just there to steer the tool. It also really helps to skew the tool slightly, depending on the direction of the grain. So if the grain's running this direction, you want to skew the tool so that you're making a skewed cut as opposed to cutting into the grain. Just like so. And you just keep doing that, and eventually you'll come up with a shape like this. And after I've finished using the Travishers, I always like to put a bit of oil on the blade to give it a little bit of protection from the Queensland weather that we've got here. That's extremely humid all of the time. So that's how I like to use my Travishers. If you've got any questions about how to use yours or how to maintain them, just let me know and I'm happy to answer any questions. So yeah, thanks for watching.